It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutch. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague, who has never stopped the pod for a poo. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
I just go where I sit.
Exactly right.
Clearly more dedicated to my craft than Lamar Jackson is to his.
Not that we talk gambling on the show anymore, really, but no. in the world of great bad beats, that debacle of a safety with the final play in the Cleveland Browns Baltimore Ravens game is epic.
Yeah, because as you say, it's the backdoor cover to end all backdoor covers, but also, as friend of the show JJ Zachariason pointed out on the Living the Stream podcast, the tilt for Jarvis Landry and Kareem Hunt owners at the end to see who would lose the points for the fumble. Mm-hmm. Because apparently, because was it Hunt who had it in the end, or was it Landry? I think it was Hunt. It was Landry, wasn't it? Because they went out the end zone, they didn't fumble out the end zone. They don't lose the yardage or some such
Crazy,
nonsense.
Right? Crazy. An excellent game. And we'll talk about it momentarily, I guess, because what we're going to discuss this week is we're going to do wildcard pitching for AFC and NFC, see where we are. We're also going to talk to you about tight ends and running backs, stay or go. In breaking news, most of running backs is go, and by most, I mean all of them.
If we were logical.
And then fantasy stuff, as it's fantasy playoff time, as the number 1 and number 2 seeds in their league of records, see if they can not lose and play each other in the final next week. Isn't that right, Neil?
Going into the week's matchup, both the number 1 and number 2 seeds are underdogs, according to NFL.com projections. Other fancy platforms are, of course, available.
The leader of said division is 11-3, which in the history of this league, which is 15 years old, equals the greatest mark, and as you quite rightly point out, is somehow an underdog in his semi-final matchup.
Yeah, and obviously, as we know, the 4 people who listen to this give a flying about our league, so we should spend the next hour talking about it.
Two of them are in it. One of them's in the semi-final. The other one, well, if you can repeat, come back to us. But anyway, let's get on with the show and let's talk about wildcards. So Neil, I thought it'd be useful with 3 weeks left to go on who's getting in these wildcard playoffs. Obviously this year, additional wildcard, 7 teams get in. As we speak right now, could change to 8, to be honest, but it isn't yet. Yeah. So 3 wildcard teams. So I thought we'd look at the runners and riders for each conference, give a bit of a schedule look, and see who we believe is going to make it. So AFC, we've got 7 teams to talk about. We've got the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, Miami Dolphins, Baltimore Ravens, Las Vegas Raiders, and just about the New England Patriots. Titans and Colts obviously going for a division. Browns and Ravens in the same division. However, obviously we expect Pittsburgh to win that one.
Do we?
Do we? I think they're just going to win it by process of accident. I expect them to win one more game and therefore they would get in.
Do you?
I do, yeah.
Don't put words in my mouth, son.
Okay, well, I'm saying Pittsburgh will win in the North, and you can debate whether they do or not later on. Let's start with Tennessee and the Colts, Neil, because one's got to win the division. And I assume you think the other one will make the playoffs, but we'll see. Titans have Lions at Packers and at Texans, and Colts have Texans at Steelers and Jags. So I think both teams have got another 2 wins in the bag at 11-4. So do the Titans have a chance at the Packers? And I assume you think the Colts are then going to beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I think both these teams are going to go 2-1 down the stretch.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. As I say, one of these teams is a paper tiger and has been for weeks and weeks. Yeah, I think obviously if it goes 2-1, it holds serve, then I believe because they have a better division win percentage, then that would give the Titans the title. But so I think
the Titans are in now in the 4 seed. So I assumed they would stay in because both only have one game in AFC South, which is the Texans, which I assume we both expect them to win. The only way it could possibly change, but then they both won one game each against each other.
Yes.
So then it would go down to AFC record. So that could change, I guess, if the Colts beat the Steelers.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see.
I expect that because of that running, and because I believe, as I say, it's Derrick Henry Sember, isn't it? So, I think the Titans win the division. I think the Colts get a wild card spot. Whether it's the first, second, or third, I don't know. But there are two teams from this division making it.
Okay, if we move on to the Cleveland Browns, who are next on the list at 9-4, they have at Giants and at Jets the next 2 weeks, and then the Steelers are home.
Well, they're winning 11 games at least, because I expect them to deal with quite handily their next two opponents, and then, as I say, they're going to Week 17 playing for the division title.
That would be insane, by the way.
Yeah. The thing about Cleveland is they have an identity on offense. The defense isn't great, but they have an identity on offense. They know what they do well, and they are just starting to find other ways to do well. Say Baker Mayfield has 340 passing yards in both of his last two games, having been looking like a player that, to be honest, Kevin Stefanski wanted him to look at the offense but not touch it. Whereas now he's actually, you don't score 42 points on the Ravens if you are not a good quarterback. I know a lot of the work was done by the running backs. He's facilitating that offense. So I think he's been very impressive. These are getting a wild card berth, and it's going to be absolutely glorious. Whether they, at least a wild card, as I say, they could maybe win the division, but down on Big Ben, to be honest. So that's why I'm just slightly wishful thinking. It's going to be glorious. Whether they're going to win it, I don't know, but they're getting in.
In lieu of Neil's chat about the Steelers not winning another game, the next game is Monday Night Football against Brandon Allen and the Cincinnati Bengals. So if that is the case, then that's serious issues. Sorry?
They lost to Washington, remember? At a time when no one expected them to lose to Washington.
Just double checking. Not looking at numbers on the right-hand side, but just looking at names. Washington seems to be top of their division, but Cincinnati seems to be bottom of theirs. Yeah,
two very ordinary offenses, and the Steelers have a propensity to play down to that level. So
true, all true. What I would state is that I'm not 100% sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Cincinnati Bengals have the same defensive line as the Washington football team.
This is true, but don't step on my narrative.
Okay. Other team in the AFC North is the Baltimore Ravens at 8-5. And they have Jags, Giants and Bengals, or as I think, 11-5.
Yeah, it's very hard to look at the Ravens and see them losing another game this year, which then obviously puts the pressure on the current 7 seed, the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, Dolphins have Pats, at Raiders, at Bills. Ouch.
Now, see, the Bills at the moment still have a chance at the number 2 seed. And obviously, they're locked into the number 3 seed. They're not locked in, sorry. No, they are the 3 seed at the moment. We know that the Patriots are not. They're not our father's Patriots, as it were. But this is still a rookie quarterback going against Bill Belichick. So I worry and I fear that the fact that the Ravens have such a cake schedule, and that the Dolphins have 2 division games against a head coach who has made a living of wrecking the heads of youngsters, and also a Bills team who may need that Week 17 game, I fear that the Dolphins might actually miss out, and it's a shame because they've been one of the better stories of the season.
The 8-5, I think they'll finish 9-7, and that's which is good.
It's progress, yeah.
Yeah, but as you said, you look at it and you go, don't really want to play Bill Belichick if I've got a rookie quarterback, because that never goes well. And the Bills might be playing for seeding, so especially considering you've decided that Pittsburgh aren't winning another game. Based on that, Neil, I think you've defined that the AFC is insane, and like the 7 seed's going to be 11-5. Mm-hmm. So based on that, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, by the way, that means that Raiders, who have Chargers tonight, we record this on Thursday. They have Chargers, Dolphins, and Broncos are probably going to go 9-7 themselves at best, and Patriots have Dolphins, Bills, and Jets, so probably finish 8-8 because they're 6-7 now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The Raiders had their shot, but their defense fell off in a massive way. Their defense has let them down numerous times this season. When the games they've had, they should not have lost to the Atlanta Falcons, and they should probably put up a better fight than they did last week. Which I'm not saying that obviously the Colts are a good team, but you're gonna spot them as many points as you did. So there's 2 games that you flip them. Maybe the Raiders now are 9-4 themselves. Maybe, and I just think they've shot the ball. The loss to the Falcons is going to be one of the most inexplicable performances by any good team all year. And I think that showed them up as, while they've made improvements under John Gruden, they're still a long way off being a team that is good enough to go in and deal with opponents like they should do.
Yeah, absolutely. To move over to the NFC, Neil, 2 teams at 9-4, the Rams and the Seahawks. Rams own the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. So you have Washington this week, the Chargers, and then the 49ers, which in a normal situation you would expect them to win at least 2, if not 3 of them, and be 12-4. Rams have Jets at Seahawks. Doesn't make sense. Totally messed that up.
Cool.
Seahawks must have Washington at Rams. Washington, Rams, and the Cardinals, because the Rams have Jets at Seahawks, Cardinals. So right, I assume that the Rams Seahawks game is for the division.
Mm.
Do you think that if the Rams win, that Seattle can win the other 2 games and go to 11-5?
The Seahawks are weird because they've changed their spots so many times this season. They were this pass happy Russell Wilson driven engine, but they couldn't stop anyone, so they had to be in shootouts. Then their offense sort of petered out, and their defense, I'm not saying it's certainly not the Legion of Boom level, but it's better than the Legion of Room. And now their offense is, again, it's okay, we'll do enough just to cling on. So do I expect them to get a wildcard berth? Yes, but I just think, again, it comes down to that. I think the Rams know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And can execute it when things go their way. Whereas I still think the Seahawks something of a schizophrenic side, and I just don't know. I don't like to say this because one of the quarterbacks is Jared Goff and the other is Russell Wilson, but I think I trust the coaching on the Rams more than I do on the Seahawks.
Wild, but probably true. If you love a narrative, Neil, and you love a momentum conversation, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next 3 games are at Falcons, at Lions versus Falcons. It should be 3 wins against porous defenses. So you would think that the Bucs play well on offense for those 3 weeks. Tom Brady will then have had 4 good weeks on offense since the bye, and they will be rolling into the playoffs at 11-5.
Who have the Saints got? Obviously, they've got the Chiefs this week. Who are their other 2 games?
Yeah, because obviously the Bucs, and I'll find out.
Yeah, because obviously the Bucs are still in the hunt for the division title. I say at the moment the Saints.
Chiefs. They are Chiefs at home to the Vikings on Christmas Day. Where, let's be honest, absolutely 1,000,000% Drew Brees is playing that game. And then they also play at the Panthers the week after. So I would expect them to win 2 of those games, and then they would win the division at 12-4.
12-4, which obviously the Bucs can't get to.
Yes, exactly.
The Bucks are going to get in because, as I say, offensively, you'd expect them to have too much for the teams they have to play. Doesn't alter the fact that on offense they've scored a lot of points, but they're boring. Aren't they? Do you know what I mean? You watch them on offense and it's dull. And I'm not saying this because, obviously, Charles Daniels, a friend of ours.
It could be a load of things, but that offense shouldn't be dull, right?
Yeah. And as I say, ever since they signed, Faustino Antonio, it was solving a problem that they didn't have. And you saw last week, we've scored a long touchdown. Yeah, who did you throw to? Scotty Miller. He was doing quite well until you burdened yourself with Tom Brady's crazy mate. Defensively as well, they're not as stout.
We've all burdened ourselves with a crazy mate, don't Neil? That always happens, doesn't it?
See, defensively, they've not been as solid as they were at one point. So I expect them to get a wildcard berth. But as you say, I think their division chances are gone.
The interesting thing about the Bucks is that I don't think they win the division. And I'm not 100% sure they're any good. But they absolutely boat raced the Green Bay Packers, who were the number one seeds. And I just find it quite interesting that they would have shown that would not be a fearful game for them. But anyway, I guess the battle then becomes between three teams, two of which I think we've killed multiple times. The first one is the Arizona Cardinals, who should be killing a team this week but won't do. Should be putting the Philadelphia Eagles out of their misery, but they will not. Then they play the 49ers and they're at the Chargers. Then the Vikings at 6-7, who tried desperately not to make the playoffs, but somehow have fallen into a position where they still can. They play the Bears this week in a loser goes home match. At the Saints and at the Lions. Bears, similar loser goes home. How the hell are they still involved in this? They've lost, I believe, 7 of their last 8 games and are somehow still in the playoff hunt. They have at Vikings and at Jags, luckily followed by a boat racing in Green Bay.
See, obviously, I will look a complete genius when the Vikings get in at 9-7 and then blag their way to the title game, because that's what I called. So obviously, I'm pulling for Kirk Cousins.
I called it in this situation, but yes,
not the process. As you should know, we're not a process-oriented system. We're all about results.
Exactly.
Quick question, I say, about the Cardinals. Now, obviously, you've watched more college football than I have over the years. I've read about the air raid and Hal Mummy and Mike Leach and whatnot. Is Cliff Kingsbury actually a good coach?
No,
because I don't think he is.
He wasn't a good coach in college.
Yeah.
This is the if you don't, like, he was fired from Texas Tech, and then was going to be hired as the offensive coordinator for USC, which is a big university and a big name, but not a very good team at present, or better, like a middling team, like a wild card style team, like 15-20. When they're not Pete Carroll's USC, is what I'm trying to say.
No.
And somehow he got himself an NFL job because he has a style of play. I don't think he's a very good coach. I usually go listen to people who understand these things. So you listen to the likes of Kevin Clark, or you listen to Warren Sharp, and they both think he's awful. Therefore, that's good enough for me. They're winning in spite of. I mean, he's got a good offensive system, but it only really works when Kyler Murray's fit. It's amazing how, I love Andy Reid, right? But his offenses never look better when Patrick Mahomes is under center. It's weird, that, isn't it? It's weird. Weird how amazing his offensive system is with a generational talent next to it. It was very good under Alex Smith. Now it's unstoppable. It's weird. Don't know how it happens. It's like the Cardinals look really good when Kyler Murray was fit. When Kyler Murray wasn't fit, the Cardinals didn't look very good. It's bizarre. It's one of these strange concepts. Like, if you've got a quarterback, you know how it works.
Yeah. Would them going 8-8 from this position shock you?
No, I don't see them beating Philadelphia. if someone asked me right now who is getting into the playoffs from the NFC East, I would absolutely 100% say the Eagles, with no hint of irony, no hint of anything. Just that is what Philadelphia would do.
Doug does December.
We as John Barshaw said, it's not the video you think it is. But yeah, absolutely. It calls into question many things. My favourite one is, in 18 months' time, when you've now got 2 quarterbacks who you're paying $100 million to, that's going to be cool. But yeah, there you go.
See, as you say, the Vikings have made a push, and they're the only team. If you look down the list of also-rans, because they're the only team that you look and think, if their offense clicks and does what it's supposed to, they could make some noise late. Because the Bears, as you said, lost 7 of 8, and their offense, unless they're playing absolute dog dirt defences, the offense can't do anything. The Detroit Lions are at 5 and 8. Matt Stafford is injured, and they have a centre who fractured his throat.
Which I'm still not 100% sure is possible, but anyway,
No.
I'm no doctor.
Then you've got the 49ers, who say could still finish 8 and 8. Which, by the way, if they finish 8 and 8 after all the injuries they've had, I don't care who wins the Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan is the coach of the year.
Yeah.
And then another 5 and 8. You've got the Giants. Well, they're the pants pulled down last week by the Cardinals, who we've already just established are not very good. And then there's the Eagles at 4-8-1.
Other teams that can finish 8 and 8 would be Washington if they went 2 and 1. And they have a quarterback whose legs nearly fell off. Then they fixed it again. Then it looked like it fell off again, but it didn't. So they had to play the dead carcass of Dwayne Haskins at quarterback, he tried his best, but still couldn't get them to lose the game against San Francisco because Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Duron Payne, Montez Sweat refused to let it happen.
I want to see, and if the boy Turner is as innovative an offensive mind as I'm sure the coaching staff and the front office hope, I want Chase Young in on like the JJ Watt type tight end plays.
I asked you. I sent you a text, and I wasn't going to do it on the pod. I'm going to do it now. I want to do a thought experiment.
Not my strong suit, but go on.
So Washington have a talented defensive line, an okay secondary. I think people big it up. I don't think it's great. It looks good because you've got a defensive line. You know that better than anything, Neil. You won a Super Bowl with same kind of logic, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've got a Pro Bowl, elite All-Pro wide receiver, an interesting tight end, a usable running back in Antonio Gibson. And they have Daniel Snyder as an owner, so this thought experiment actually could work. 3 first-round picks, and I phone up Houston and say I want Deshaun Watson. How many games do Washington win the next year? Don't forget this is in theory a 2-year window because you then would have to pay Jonathan Allen and have no money. You have to pay Duron Payne and have no money. You're coming up to having to pay Chase Young and you have no money.
But basically, you want to use up as much of Deshaun Watson's prime as you can while you've still got these cheap pieces.
Correct.
3 first-round picks. It buys you a division title. It makes you entertaining.
Does it get you fair? Does it get okay? That's what I'm saying is, does it make you better than the New Orleans Saints next year?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're now better than you're now the division champ and better than one of the other divisions because I believe they'll be the best team. In theory, they'll be the best team in that division. Mm-hmm. Does it make you better than the Green Bay Packers?
No.
Okay, fine. So you're gonna, and then what's the other? Does it make you better than the Rams or the Seahawks?
Potentially, because the Seahawks, as I say, are screw it, whatever works, and the Rams still have Jared Goff.
So therefore, you move from a team that at the start of the year people expected to get like the number 2 pick to a team that has to go to Lambeau in January 2022 in an NFC title game when in theory you haven't won a playoff game in 20 years? How is this not a bad situation to be in? Apart from the fact in 2025 you're absolutely screwed.
The worrying thing would be as well in 2022 when this offense catches fire and does so well next year that Scott Turner then becomes a head coach somewhere else. And then Deshaun Watson has to learn another offense, and basically,
he's already done it 15 times in 4 years, so I don't see what the problem is. But anyway, that's enough on that, because it's a wild fever dream that I dreamt up last night. I think we're suggesting Browns, Colts, Ravens as the wild cards in the AFC.
Yeah,
and we're saying Seahawks, Bucks, Vikings.
Yeah.
That's insane.
If I know anything, and I don't, I know that this is not the time of year you start backing against Kirk Coupons.
This is Kirk Coupons time. Okay, let's move on, and let's start a little bit of stay and go again. So we did quarterbacks, we did wide receivers. We're going to briefly go over tight ends and running backs, because, that's what you do. Let's start with Neil's favourite position, tight end. 3 to look at, really. First one, Hunter Henry at the Chargers, Neil.
Yeah, Hunter Henry has been good. He's not been dominant. Obviously, there is a lengthy injury history when we talk about Hunter Henry. He played out this year, obviously, on the franchise tag. He's going to be 27 when the season starts, so he's still relatively young. We've seen tight ends break out at this age in the past. It's just a question of whether they can break out and sustain the breakout. I just think that I think the Chargers are going to want to try and keep as many pieces in place for Justin Herbert while he's still cheap. So I think he's more likely to stay where he is, and probably get probably a good deal, but not a great one, because I think other teams, given how toxic the tight end position is, are going to look and think, I would expect him to get, if he did get to the open market, he'd get more than Austin Hooper got last year, as I think he's a better player than Hooper. It's just a question of where he would end up.
Both of them can't stay on the field, though. I need Henry to stay on the field. That's why I don't know if I'm the Chargers if I pay the money, because he can't stay on the field. And he's also 27 now. I don't know. Next one, Jonnu Smith, Tennessee Titans, another guy who hasn't really stayed on the field but loves a touchdown this year.
Yeah, that's the thing. Jonnu Smith was very good, and as one of the champions of Jonnu, when I pointed out that he was someone I would be targeting late in my drafts, and that he then seemed to be hitting and seemed to be having the year we all thought. Yeah, it's not been great because most of his production has actually come from the fact that he just scores touchdowns.
Yeah.
As I say, if you look at his stats on the year, he's only played in 12 games, only started 11 of them. He's got 32 receptions for 358 yards and 7 touchdowns.
358 yards and 7 touchdowns is Jerome Bettis style numbers.
Yeah. I say he only had 8 touchdowns in his career before this year.
That is an Eric Ebron anomaly season, right?
Yeah. Now, he's a decent blocker. He's athletic. That was one of the things about him that I've always liked. He's a good weapon to use. You can see that they give him carries on occasion. But I just think that the Titans, in the financial position they are in, I don't know how much they're going to want to commit to him, considering, as I say, that he's shown a few health concerns and that their offense has looked just as good with other tight ends like Ferkser and Michael Pruitt and just Freddie Jeff Swain, whoever it is. So I would imagine
real names.
Not real names.
I'm making names up now just to see if anyone's paying attention.
Madden generated players. I expect again he's someone that I would imagine he'll get paid. He's not going to reset the market though.
Gerald Everett at the Rams, Neil.
Another player that I've been big on ever since he came into the league, same draft class as Jonnu Smith. I think Gerald Everett is a better tight end, he's a better player than Tyler Higbee. As evidenced by the fact that Tyler Higbee has done absolutely diddly in his career in games in which Gerald Everett has played. But, as we say, the Rams have not an awful lot of money because they've tied it up in their quarterback, and I think they might still be paying Todd Gurley, I don't know. Jared Everett is someone that I think will get a nice deal somewhere and could be the late breakout that we've all been waiting for at his next stop. But I just don't think re-signing him is going to be a priority for the Rams, which is a shame because he when he was coming into the league, excuse me, Sean McVay basically compared him to Jordan Reed, who he'd worked with at Washington, and he's not really used him.
Look, you mean coaches lie? Who knew? Final tight end quickly, Neil. Former WWE 24/7 champ Rob Gronkowski.
He's playing for the Bucs on our toll, isn't he? Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's one of the. He's looked more lively than he did in his final years with the Pats. I think it does help. I assume that cannabis oil's really loosened them joints up on his year off. So let's hope he stays.
But this is the problem again, that he was starting to become a bigger part of the offense, and then they went and signed Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
So. I say at one point,
the thought of Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski in the same locker room just, blows my mind.
He had a nice run here. He had a run of games where he had at least 4 receptions. So he's had 8 targets in week 6, 8 targets in week 7, 4 targets, but he caught all 4 of them in week 8, and he caught a touchdown pass in all of them. Since then, he's had 1 game with more than 2 receptions.
Interesting.
We know that in his pomp, this is the greatest 2-way tight end in modern NFL history. But it's a question of how much does he still have left, and how much do you, as an organisation, want to put into him for one more go round? Because next year you would assume it's all but certainly Tom Brady's last year.
Let's move over to running back, Neil. Starting Green Bay, who have 2. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, who seem to take up 95% of the snaps in Green Bay. So will be big losses, both on no money whatsoever. Do the Packers look to bring either of them back?
I think if they're going to bring anyone back, it would be Aaron Jones. He's been more of a big playmaker. I just think that given his season last year, it's unfortunate that this year's been a little bit of a down one for him compared to last year. Obviously, he led the league in touchdowns last year, then didn't get a deal, so basically was having to prove himself. This year, was it 823 yards, 5.1 yards per attempt, which is his career average, and 7 touchdowns. It's a question of, do the Packers, and with Matt LaFleur, with his influence, we know that their offense bases, it lives off what they can do with the run game. We know Matt LaFleur came from Tennessee, where it was all based on Derrick Henry. I'm not saying Aaron Jones is Derrick Henry. I'm not an idiot. But it's a question of, do they think that they can keep going with Aaron Jones at his level? Or do they really want next year to say, okay, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Jamal. It's time now to start seeing what we've got in A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the boy, Jamal Williams, he's one of those that he'll go somewhere else. In the old days, this would be like the, what was his name? Michael Turner, for the Falcons, who'd been LaDainian Tomlinson's backup for the Chargers, and then he went away and was basically given a huge workload and looked really good for a time because he didn't have much tread on his tyres. It's a similar situation with this with Jamal Williams, but I just don't think he's got enough to be... I don't think he'd be Aaron Jones if he went somewhere else. And similarly, I think if he stays at Green Bay, he's not going to unseat Aaron Jones if they keep him.
Wayne Gallman at the Giants, Neil, done well. Not sure how Saquon's going to be. Do they look to try and bring him back?
They probably do. Gallman's only 27. And as you say, has looked good in spurts. A lot of his production, as I say, especially fantasy owners will know this, has been boosted by touchdowns. But he's not been terrible. And you'll think of who they cycled through before realising that Wayne Gallman is not terrible. They signed Dion Lewis. They brought the rotting corpse of Devonta Freeman off the scrap heap to play him, where Gallman would have been serviceable from the get-go. It's a question now of, do they want to run it back when Barkley comes back, which we assume he's going to because he's a freak? Do they want Gallman to hang around cheaply? Or do they want to say, we'll just draft someone late and they can be the backup, which is what sensible teams would do? But obviously you're going to have the questions about how much is Barkley going to be Barkley again? And do you really want to run the risk of him not performing at least in the early stages, and you're then having to trust a rookie when you could get Goldman. But obviously the problem for that is, does Goldman want to come back for Buttons, considering this is probably his last chance to get a deal? But I just worry that he's going to be one of these players that 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a bit longer, he'd have got a lot of money on the open market, whereas now, with the cap being what it is, and with teams, touch wood, hopefully coming to Jesus on what they're supposed to pay running backs, he's not going to get, he's not going to get mega bucks.
Chris Carson at the Seahawks, Neil. What happens with there? Do we ever know what's going on at running back up in Seattle?
We've seen when Chris Carson is healthy, they want him to be the guy, which is why, you draft a guy in the 7th round, and then you go and draft one in the 1st round, and even when he's healthy, you give all the carries to the guy from the 7th round. Because obviously, say they're going to have Rashad Penny coming back. They've shown that they don't mind taking late round darts at running back. We've had the likes of, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas. Not very good, but they'll continue to try. And again, I think with the fact that Carson has a somewhat lengthy injury past, his best bet is probably seeing what the Seahawks want to offer him and maybe taking that.
Final one, Neil. Lenny Fourn's Buccaneers. Still only 26 and about to probably be on his 3rd team.
Yeah, he's got nothing left.
At 26.
At 26. I mean, he's the advert for, you do not draft these people after a hell of a lot of carries in college. You do not draft them 4th overall, because the chances are their college team saw the best of them. Now, Leonard Fournette had one decent season as a rookie. He had one okay season in his 3rd year, and this year has been nothing short of a disaster. No one could have foreseen that Ronald Jones would become a force. That's because he's not. He's just better than Leonard Fournette.
He's just the best running back on the roster, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought falling where he did, got the chance to go anywhere he wanted. He goes to the Buccaneers, where we've seen in the past that Ronald Jones is not a good pass catcher. So if you're a pass catching running back tethered to Tom Brady, you're going to get a lot of work because he's going to want you on there because he doesn't want a running back blowing his assignment and getting himself lit up. But the fact of the matter is, Leonard Fournette, when he's been on the field, has not been very good. And so we're not parties to this. We're not inside the meeting rooms. You just wonder, is it a Leonard Fournette ability problem, or is it a Leonard Fournette problem?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that, the Jacksonville Jaguars in the end wanted no part of. Now, you could sometimes look and just think, well, that's the Jacksonville Jaguars and maybe that's just them. But if it's similar in Tampa Bay, that's an issue for him.
Well, I say the Jacksonville Jaguars got rid of Leonard Fournette and have force-fed a running back that they got after the draft. That's the way to do it.
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. After making a mistake, you learn from it. Well done, Jacksonville. At 1-12.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Let's get into the fantasy portion of the show, Neil, and let's start with your fantasy darling.
Hello, darling.
My fantasy darling is a tight end, because why not? It's nearly Christmas. And it's Irv Smith Jr. The Vikings are playing the Chicago Bears. Irv Smith benefited last week from the fact that Kyle Rudolph's Iron Man streak of 93 games came to an end. Didn't run the most routes of the Minnesota tight ends. Tyler Conklin, another great name. He actually ran more routes, but Irv Smith was targeted 4 times, caught all 4 for 63 yards and a touchdown. The Bears are not good against tight ends. So we've seen that Irv Smith is someone who has shown some chemistry with Kirk Cousins. So as a secondary option behind Justin Jefferson, I really don't mind him this week.
Let's move on and get Neil's fantasy dud loser time.
My dud loser is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, we saw last week...
Do you remember when he was a thing?
I remember it's the split second happening, yes. Hats off to everyone, by the way, if you had the choice in your dynasty drafts and you took Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor. Hats off to you. Which happened in our league, I believe. Doesn't mean I'm such shit, you know.
Have you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Jonathan Taylor?
I've got Jonathan Taylor, yeah. I've got Jonathan Taylor.
How'd you get on that dynasty league, by the way?
I've won the first overall pick. So anyway, we can say
in a classic running backs don't matter scenario, Neil picked the better quarterback and then didn't win any games.
Yeah, we saw last week that I said Miles Sanders. I didn't like his matchup because the Saints' defense was that good. The problem is that the defense, Miles Sanders then looked very good because the quarterback, helped Miles Sanders. The problem with that this week, and trying to apply that argument to it, is the Chiefs have said in the last few weeks, no, we can't be arsed running the ball. It doesn't work, so stuff it. We're not going to do it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire obviously gets a bit of receiving work, but if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's not exactly been fantasy relevant this year, and I just don't see he's going to get enough opportunities to score touchdowns unless they go, because when even down at the goal line, they like to do a little bit more funky shit.
What I would say is, Neil, I'm going to defend you slightly. Last week you picked Miles Sanders, right, and he scored a load of points. However, he was running for 2 yards a carry, with the exception of one run. There was a 78-yard touchdown. That's an issue for your logic, but as we discuss a lot, the process was sound. With the exception of one play, he wasn't very good.
Yeah, so I was right last week. Suck it.
Take that, haters.
Yeah. So yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as I say, he's been serviceable at times, but for where he was going in draft at the start of the season to what he is now, he's been a disappointment. And I think that disappointment is going to continue into week 15.
I'm in 2 dynasty drafts. I have no running backs in either. And I hate it because I'm going to be doing some kind of crazy crapshoot running back draft pick in the dynasty draft that I don't want to be party to.
You need running backs in dynasty. The problem is that you have to let them go at a certain amount of time. But
yeah, I took over one of the teams he had Nick Chubb and rotting carcasses. I now have Nick Chubb and still different rotting carcasses, and AJ Dillon, who, as we've said, is third on a depth chart in Green Bay.
Yeah, he's third in a partnership of 2. Obviously, for more dynasty related stuff, you should check out all the podcasts from friend Matt Kelly. Who did you see this week with Rich Rebar? It was a 2.5 hour podcast.
Does he take a break, or does he just go straight through?
If you met, I have been on a podcast with Matt for Wonderworld, and we were talking for about 2 hours. Now, obviously, there's pauses. He's bringing up and pulling up stats. So I can only imagine how long that must have actually been. It must have been nearly 3 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. This one won't be that long. And we're on to our final segment, which is the daily fantasy teams of the week.
Mainz and Dutz. Daily fantasy team of the week.
Show me the money.
Neil, quarterback this week, please.
My quarterback this week at 5,900. It is the Indianapolis quarterback, Phil Rivers. They are playing the Houston Texans. Phil Rivers has been good since week 8. Or week 9, sorry. I think he's averaged about 23 fantasy points per game, and baked into that is one game where he only scored 9, and that was against the Ravens. The Houston Texans defense it's a train wreck. I was going to say Greek tragedy, but Greek tragedies are something you have to watch because you want to see how badly it turns out at the end. This is just I just know it's terrible. I don't need to see the results. So yeah, 5,900, Phil Rivers.
Do you know what EPA per play is, Neil?
It's expected points added,
so
it's an efficiency stat.
Phil Rivers is 39 and is in a new team and currently ranks 4th among all quarterbacks in EPA per play. I'm not diving back in. I'm still out on Phil Rivers. Robert Mays, however, who sent that tweet, is not. My quarterback. Speaking of old quarterbacks, I've gone with Tom Brady. He's 6,600. He's playing Atlanta. As I pointed out in the wildcard section of the show, I expect Tampa Bay to go on some kind of mythical run here, and I expect Tom to get loads of play and loads of points. So I've gone with Tom Brady.
So in an interview that he gave with Jenna Lane of ESPN, he was saying that he was talking to some of his friends who still live up in the northeast, and he mentioned that he doesn't miss shoveling snow. On a likelihood of 1 to 300 million, how likely do you think it is that Tom Brady, after his rookie year, went near a single flake of snow outside his house in New England?
What I'm going to do is I'm secretly going to turn this around on you. Keyshawn Johnson, formerly of the New York Jets and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in fact, and a very big mouth, has his own breakfast show on ESPN Radio. It's actually with Jay Will and somebody else whose name escapes me. And he was ranting this week as he's actually moved from Los Angeles to Connecticut to be on the radio show. And someone told him he had to shovel his sidewalk because which is basically his pavement, not just his pavement, but the curb bit as well that goes all the way to the road. You own that bit, and if someone trips, you're liable for it. And he was losing his shizzle because he was like, "Why am I doing this?" And the two guys pointed out, "Why are you even doing it in the first place? Why aren't you paying some kid on the street $20?" And he was like, "I don't know. I just assumed I'd do it because it's my house." Because he's never dealt with snow before, because he's from Los Angeles. So, has Tom Brady ever shoveled snow? No. And I'm sure he's happy with 78 and sunny in Tampa this year.
With his mad mate living in his house.
Let's be honest, though, what I'm interested in. Do you think Tom Brady's really got mates in the Northeast? Because I don't.
No, Tom Brady doesn't have mates.
That's what I'm saying, right? Tom Brady doesn't have friends, no.
No.
Elephant's in the room here. Peyton Manning's got mates. Tom Brady's got acquaintances.
Peyton Manning's got mates. Tom Brady's got 6 rings. if we're playing devil's advocate here.
Peyton Manning's got 2. It's not
no,
like
Peyton Manning's got
any.
1 and 1.
No, he's got 2. He's literally got 2.
He's got 2.
I watched both of them.
He's got 2, and Von Miller got him 1 of them. Let's just put it that way.
Do I do the Bill Belichick thing, or do we just move on?
Let's just move on.
Okay. Running back 1, Neil.
Don't ask stupid questions. Who do you think my running back 1 is?
December Henry.
Yeah, 9,500. They're playing the Detroit Lions, one of the worst run defences I've ever seen. It's King Henry time.
He has the Lions and the Packers in the next few weeks and is on course for 2,000 yards. And by on course, I mean smashing through it because he's playing these terrible run defences.
Yeah, it was actually a travesty that they took him out for, I think, most of the fourth quarter last week because that single game rushing record was his. Yeah,
he's good. And yeah, I'm glad to have him in a fantasy league. My running back 1 is Kareem Hunt, who I think I text you on, when would that have been? Monday morning. I was behind in a fantasy matchup and said to you, need yards and scores from Kareem Hunt here, and you said unlucky, and somehow I was lucky. Cleveland are playing the New York Giants this week. They're not very good, and Daniel Jones I think is still going to be hobbled, so I expect Cleveland to get a long lead. So Kareem Hunt 5,100.
Yeah, but don't worry though, because Jason Garrett has tested positive, or he's a close contact one, so he's not going to be calling the game for the Giants. So we do have the Freddie Kitchens revenge game.
No words. Running back 2, Neil.
Running back 2 is Mr. Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts playing the Houston Texans. Houston Texans' run defence is abysmal. Jonathan Taylor has found his mojo in the last few weeks, including running through a gap that was, in the words of Josh Norris, at least 7 Jonathan Taylors wide. This is that type of execution is what got Paul Gunter fired. He's 7,200.
I've gone the other... Wait. Just for those paying attention... Your running back 1 was 9,500,
yes.
And your running back 2 was 7,200.
Yes.
Boy, the next list of these names is going to be interesting. My wide receiver 2 is Naheem Hines in the same game. in 5,400. I picked him because I haven't got any money. And I expect him to play a lot as the Texans are rubbish. So I've actually gone for 2 quote-unquote backup running backs in games where I expect blowouts for those teams. So there you go, 5,400.
And in the words of Yoda, that is why you fail.
I don't know, I've done all right this year. Wide receiver 1, Neil.
Wide receiver 1, some people think that Cal McNair owns the Houston Texans. They are wrong. T.Y. Hilton owns the Houston Texans. In his career, T.Y. Hilton, let me find this up. In his career, in games not against the Houston Texans, he averages 66.8 yards per game, 4.47 receptions, and 13.2 fantasy points. In games against the Houston Texans, he averages 5.4 receptions for 96.8 yards and 19 fantasy points. T.Y. Hilton has supped from the cup of eternal youth in the last couple of weeks, so he's looked like himself again. He's 5,500, so I like Rivers to link up with Hilton and then carry it, handing it off as well to Jonathan Taylor. 5,500, T.Y. Hilton.
My wide receiver 1 is my tight end, so we'll come to him later. But in the process of DraftKings, my wide receiver 1 is Chris Godwin, who is my stack with Tom Brady. Got to pick one. I think he's getting fitter. I think they want to use him more. Faustino, Asprilla, Brown, Antonio. Be damned. I'm going with Chris Godwin. He's 6,200. Wide receiver 2, Neil.
So Houston are playing the Indianapolis Colts this week. Now, if T.Y. Hilton owns the Texans, in 3 games against the Indianapolis Colts in his very still young career, Kiki QT averages 7 receptions for 92 yards and 18.6 PPR points. Yeah. Against everyone else, he averages 29 yards, 2 receptions, and 7 PPR points. He's the one thing other than Chad Hansen, but again, he's a bit of a boy band surfer boy, and I don't know how much I can trust him. Kiki QT seems to be the one thing that does seem to be working in the passing game for Deshaun Watson. Now, if I was sensible, and I'm not, and I don't work for the Houston Texans, I would shut down Deshaun Watson because he's all you've got. But they're going to roll him out. He's going to play because, that's the type of trooper he is. I think he's going to look for Kiki QT early and often. So for 5,300, he is a worthwhile investment as my wide receiver 2.
My wide receiver 2 is in the same division, but a different game. It's Corey Davis, Detroit. Well, Tennessee Titans playing the Detroit Lions. He's 5,800. I love this offense, It's really, really good and fun to watch. And in similar, when we were talking about the thought experiment of the Washington football team, this will be the last year where this offense will have Arthur Smith on it. I assume he will be a head coach next year. Do you not think Arthur Smith sounds such an English name? Do you not think he'd have gone by Art? Or Artie? I don't even know what his face looks like, so I just assume he wears a bowler hat and has got like a twingly beard and he smokes a pipe. Is that not accurate?
Yeah. He smokes a pipe, he walks a whippet, and he enjoys a half a pint of mild.
Who doesn't? Mans, obviously. But yeah, so I've gone for Corey Davis. Gets a lot of play, even though AJ Brown makes all the noise. AJ Brown makes all the noise because he's secretly a centaur. Wide receiver 3, Neil.
PFF tried to say, in a praiseworthy way, tried to say that AJ Brown was Terrell Owens. AJ Brown responded with, AJ Brown is AJ Brown.
Could you? I still can't believe.
My man.
That I still can't believe that in college, on one side was AJ Brown, one side of the field was AJ Brown, and the other side of the field was DK Metcalf, and that team was shit. Like, it doesn't. It's up there with the. It may surpass the Odell Beckham Jr. Jarvis
LSU,
Landry,
yeah.
LSU one, just insane. Okay, sorry Neil, wide receiver 3.
Wide receiver 3 is Kendrick Bourne. The San Francisco 49ers are playing the Dallas Cowboys. As we know, the Dallas Cowboys defense has been bad. Kendrick Bourne has not been great, but he has had at least 5 targets in his last 4 games. He did see 7 targets last week against Washington, but Nick Mullins beyond good. So he missed.
He is so bad. Like I know fear does terrible things to humans, and he was scared. Boy, was that man scared! But he was terrible.
Yeah, there's no Deebo Samuel, so it's pretty much it's Jordan Reed, it's Brandon Ayuk, and it's Kendrick Bourne. So for a wide receiver 3 for 4,100, I'll pays me money. I'll take me chances.
In my wide receiver 3 is Neil's wide receiver 2. It's Kiki Kuti. Regardless of the stat against the Indianapolis Colts, since injuries and drug taking, he has got a lot of targets over the last few weeks, and I would expect that to continue. And if he gets in the end zone, all the more, and 5,300. Who's your tight end, Neil?
Tight end is Irv Smith Jr., 3,600. Vikings playing the Bears.
The opposite of paying 3,600 for your tight end would to say, my tight end is the wide receiver 1 in the NFL, Travis Kelce, against the New Orleans Saints. He can't be stopped.
No.
And have you noticed that he's permanently open? Like,
he's not.
There's no one... No, but most of the time, no one is anywhere near him.
Yeah. So you know what I say? When he missed his entire rookie season because he had microfracture surgery, and since then he's not missed a game. Can I have this surgery, please? I don't want to play tight end. I just literally want to be such that I can perform feats of athletic daring do on a regular basis. And by that, I mean I just literally want to sit down and my knee not hurt.
Exactly right. He is dead good.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah,
breaking news. He is dead good. And is unfair to have him and Mahomes. Who is your flex, Neil?
My flex, Mark Ingram had 1 snap last week. That's the way. Good, Ravens, good. Feed J.K. Dobbins. Gus Edwards, if we must. J.K. Dobbins, because we shall. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars' defence is awful. There seems to be a theme, awful lot of bad defences in the NFL. It's almost like these are the teams we should attack in situations like this. He's 5,900. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is going to run as well, but I like the chances of this game being a bit blowouty. So maybe J.K. Dobbins would get a healthier workload than he would do if it was competitive.
Blowouty is a great use of the English language, by the way. My flex is Cole Beasley in Buffalo at the Denver Broncos. His quarterback's dead good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. Like, you know, his completion percentage has gone up like 20% from last year, which leads me to believe he's cheating in some way, shape or form. Obviously, Cole Beasley isn't Stephon Diggs, but he does love getting him the ball. Denver Broncos, not good.
No.
Drew Lock, not good. So yeah, Cole Beasley, 4,700.
Brian Billick, a man who has seen an awful lot of football, did say he's never seen anything like it in his 40 years in the NFL of a player whose completion percentage rose so much from one year to the next and not from rookie to sophomore season.
I was going to say, that's the issue, right? Not the issue. That's the outlier, is that what people have tended to say is rookie year or first year you play, depending on how you want to describe it, right? The biggest jump is from the first year you play to the second year you play. This is from the second year you played to the third year you played. That doesn't happen. No. That's not how this usually works.
The downside for the Buffalo Bills, and there will be a downside because this season has been phenomenally successful. They are being talked of as one of the AFC teams who could maybe live with the Chiefs from an offensive point of view. The bad thing is that this is the price you pay for having a talented offensive coordinator who is not your head coach. He's going to go away, and therefore you now need to try and find, you need to recapture the magic with the next guy who comes in.
Yeah. Defense and special teams, Neil.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because they're playing Atlanta, and Atlanta, there's been a lot of disappointment this year, but the Falcons, literally you're looking at the Falcons and saying, my God, no one on this team is usable for fantasy. How has this happened? So yeah, I said Matt Ryan is facing, congressional hearings about, when did you know you weren't good anymore, and why didn't you tell someone? Yeah, the Bucs, I say, defense have not been great the last few weeks, but this is something of a get right spot.
I've got the Arizona Cardinals here, 2,900. I expect the Philadelphia Eagles to win, but a week's worth of tape on Jalen Hurts leads me to believe there'll be a couple of mistakes, a few sacks, maybe an interception. And when you're paying 2,900, you're just kind of looking for 5 to 7 points from your defense, and that's what I think the Cardinals will get this week.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that for the... this is still baffling. This is the Eagles' 14th game of the season. It will be their 13th different starting offensive line.
It's not good, that.
No, it's
not conducive to good football.
No, a quarterback whose mechanics are regressing, and receivers who can't get open because the scheme or whatnot, but having a revolving door in front of him was not doing Carson Wentz any favours. Maybe the skill set offered by Jalen Hurts means it's not going to be as much a hindrance because he literally can bail out the back door if needs be. Because they're starting someone called Matt Pryor at right tackle. I'd rather have former England wicketkeeper Matt Pryor at right tackle going up against Hassan Riddick, who is coming off a game in which he had 5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles.
Which is a very good time for Hassan Riddick to do that, as the Cardinals didn't take up his 5th-year option because he hadn't been very good, and that was his moved him up to 10 sacks on the year. Bravo. Let's recap, Neil. Who is your quarterback?
My quarterback is Philip Rivers.
How about Tom Brady? It's 2012, everyone. Running back 1.
King Derek.
I've got Kareem Hunt, running back 2.
Johnny Taylor.
I've got Naheem Hines, wide receiver 1.
T.Y. Hilton.
I've got Chris Godwin, wide receiver 2.
Kiki QT.
I've got Corey Davis, wide receiver 3.
Kendrick Bourne.
I have Kiki QT. Tight end.
Irv Smith.
I have the best wide receiver in the NFL, Travis Kelce. Flex.
J.K. Dobbins.
For Cole Beasley in defense and special teams.
The Buccaneers of Tampa Bay.
I have the Cardinals of Arizona or Phoenix or other places, St. Louis. Chicago. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Were they in Boston? No, don't think they were.
No.
Anyway, Neil, we're an hour and 3 minutes in, so let's find out where people can catch you before we log off.
At End13, find all my stuff in the usual places. I'll be doing the start sit for your crucial Week 15 fancy matchups. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. And I'm going to be old the next time we speak.
Proper old.
Like,
I'm a man. I'm 40. Mike Gundy-esque old, which reminds me, I need to do some editing. I'm at Mainz7, combined we are at Waxing Lyrical. As Neil quite rightly pointed out, in 2 days Neil will be 40. Please let him know, remind him.
Because my memory ain't so good anymore.
Until then, these top guys are out.